fuerza, cabrón, soy un Sancho King. Así que dale, y despacito, porque lo mueve, pero muy rico. Así que dale, y despacito, porque lo mueve, pero bonito.
Bienvenidos and welcome, guys, to Sancho Fantasy Football. This is the second video on the edition of 2020 recap, where I show you guys leagues that I joined and drafted with live or real people. And I'm going to explain and elaborate as to why or why not I drafted some of these players. If you guys missed the first video of this edition, please go back to my channel. It's listed as do not draft like this. And I specify why I purposely drafted those players, but I would never have really drafted them in any league ever, and especially based on where they were going. So go watch that one and come back to this one. But in this video, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to properly draft. So with that being said, this was a 10-man league PPR, and I was picked number 10. So I was right at that turn from round 1 to round 2. My first pick was actually Joe Mixon. Now Joe Mixon, he was set up for a good year with Joe Burrow there, more solidified offensive line, but unfortunately, as you guys know, he got hurt. But I want to show you guys a little bit of why I thought he was going to have a good year. So in 2018, I actually had him on a team, and a combination of him and Saquon Barkley on his rookie year, it won me a championship. So in that year, he was scoring 17.4 fantasy points per game, PPR. So keep that in mind. This whole video is PPR. This whole channel is going to be PPR. For a grand total of 243.4 points. He missed 2 games, which is respectable. Like, this is football, guys. Players are gonna get injured eventually. It's a lot of hits. This is a lot of physical sport. So injuries will happen, and it's gonna happen at any moment. But to miss 2 games, that's fine. Like, that's what you want from a running back. A guy who's only gonna miss 3 games tops, roughly, right? Like, that's perfect. So in 2019, he was doing 14.1 per game, but he did struggle with that offensive line from week 1 through 8. But then he exploded. Eventually, he ended up with 225.4 points total, and then missed 0 games. So this is what you want from your workhorse, guys. RB1s and RB2s. You want guys that are going to be there for you weekly, who can handle the workload and can catch. This is an ideal player. To get him in the 10th spot, this was perfect. And as you guys know, he got hurt, so he missed 10 games. Still scored 16.6 per game, and for a grand total of 99.6, which is respectable. But also, guys, keep in mind that it's also how you recover yourself when injuries do happen. My second pick was Josh Jacobs. He was right there in that corner or turn. In his rookie year, Josh Jacobs scored 14.7 per game for a grand total of 191.6 and missed 3 games due to injury. And again, guys, that's respectable. For 2020, for those of us who had him, we realized that he was more inconsistent than not. So he ended up scoring 15.4 per game for a grand total of 231.3 points and missed 1 game. So honestly, I benched him a lot. I could not rely on him. And we'll see on my screenshots as I go through them. So round 3, so 18 picks later, Jonathan Taylor was there. Now, I guess you could say I have like the X factor or intuition, and I can read situations, read players, how like they'll perform in the NFL. And I knew Jonathan Taylor eventually was going to be that RB1 player, like a Saquon, like a Zeke, where they were going to score 20 points a game. But keep in mind that rookies and players that join a new team do struggle first half of the season. With Marlon Mack out of the picture, I knew that was going to be a little sooner than, I had a feeling, I guess you could say, that it was going to happen sooner than later. Those of us who had him held on to him, and we made it to the playoffs. It was well worth it. And so I knew that it was going to take a while for him to get into the rhythm of the NFL and learn that offense. But it was going to be worth it. So this is why I picked him this high. So I was in that turn, right? So this is the third. So in the fourth round, I ended up choosing David Johnson as a band-aid. What I mean by that is I know that David Johnson was already past his prime. Like, this was downhill for him. But he's that one guy that you would be decent enough to cover for you in the meantime. He was the RB1 in the team of the Houston Rockets, and I needed him to pretty much cover for Jonathan Taylor until he got into the rhythm. So just to give you a little background on David Johnson, he was scoring 15 per game. First 6 games, he scored 161.8 points. That's amazing for 6 games. Now, I knew he was going to do good. I was not expecting him to be that good. But then again, I also did not expect what happened in the second half. He completely disappeared. He missed 4 games. He only ended up scoring for 17 more points, 18 more points in those last 10 games or weeks. And it's unfortunate. I did not expect that. But I wasn't done. I recovered myself, and I'll show you guys. So 18 picks later, there was a guy who I could not believe was still there, and his name is Robert Woods. Robert Woods is that ideal wide receiver too. Like, he's that guy you want on your team for consistency on a weekly basis, who's going to give you 15 and 20 plus every week with an opportunity for that high. He actually, just a funny story, he was in a team in 2018. He was on the waiver, right? He had 3 solid games, and I couldn't believe he was still there on the waiver. So I snugged him, and I snugged him up, and then I was happy. He won me a championship with a combination of him and Thielen, and he's always been my guy since then. Robert Woods, in 2018, on that year, he scored 16.6 per game, 265.6 total. In 2019, he was scoring 15.5 per game for a grand total of 232.9. And in 2020, he scored 15.3 per game, 245.1 total, and missed 0 games. This was a steal here for me. This is my wide receiver 1. I just want that one guy who's going to be solid every week. And there he was. And there was another guy I was tempted to draft here, but I already had him on another team, and I don't want to run it for you guys, but hold on. So right in that turn, I could not believe this guy was still there. In this league, I was with a lot of Bear fans as well, and I was shocked that he was here. Mr. David Montgomery. Now, in 2019, his rookie year, it was obvious that he was going to struggle, especially, no offense to the Bears fans, but on a team that's not that good. But he couldn't find any space. He was getting tackled right away. He was falling. So in 2019, he's only scored 10.6 per game, 170.4 total. But in this year, I knew it was his second year, and he was one of those guys I didn't really need, but when I saw him there, it was too good to be true. So I had to draft him. Whew. Look, guys, I had Joe Mixon, Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor, David Johnson, and now David Montgomery. Man, okay, so in 2020, he scored 14.2 per game for a grand total of 264.8. He was my RB1 at the end of the season. Like, nobody else was scoring like him. He was so solid. It's incredible. Like, he is the ideal running back, and still at this late, and he only missed 1 game. Dude, you guys follow me. I'm gonna get you steals like this. Okay, So even better, for my 7th pick, think about it, guys. It went through another 18 picks, and I could not believe this guy was left. I had to pick him up. I had to. Mr. Calvin Ridley. Now, the only reason I was avoiding him until this point is because I already had him on another team. And then prior to this year, it was kind of like a boom or bust type of guy. And he also had like a stigma of, being injury prone a little bit. So I didn't want to take another risk having him this high. But he was there. There was no questions asked. I hit the draft button so fast. A little background. 2018, he was scoring 12.9 per game, 206.8 total, which is really respectable. 2019, he was scoring 15.2 per game, 197 total. That's really good for a wide receiver 2 there. And in 2020, this year, he ended up improving to 18.8 per game, 281.5 total, and he did miss 2 games, but there was no questions asked. He was my wide receiver 1. Hey, I just plugged him in every week, and he would score and somehow come up with points. If you guys follow the Atlanta Falcons, or at least follow them through an app to see how they were doing, they're hard to watch, but at least really was there with a touchdown, or he just had a good yardage game. So I was really happy thus far in this draft. And then that turn, there was another guy I actually was high on, and I couldn't believe he was there. And he actually saved my league, or was actually doing really well for me on a league last year where I was struggling with the wide receivers. And he ended up being a wide receiver 1. And I'm talking about in 2019. But my 8th pick was Mr. DJ Chark. So again, in 2019, he was scoring 15.1 per game, 225.8 total. And this year, 2020, he scored 11.8 per game, 153.6 total, and missed 3 games. It's unfortunate, but things happen. Sometimes, it doesn't go that way. But for an 8th round pick, I was happy. I was content at this point. And then 18 picks later, Mr. Julian Edelman. Now, Edelman, I get it. Tom Brady wasn't there anymore, but he's always been that ideal wide receiver 2 as well. He's one of those guys that nobody's drafting, and then falls down to guys like me who know the worth of these players. From 2013 to 2019, he's always been that player who gives you like 15 to 20 points a game. And for example, in 2019, he scored 16 per game, 256.28 total. And yeah, so this departure of Brady in 2020 showed, and his injuries. He only scored 9.4 per game, 56.22 total, missed 10 games. I mean, it is what it is. I was, at this point, I didn't really need him, but it was nice if he would have did something more than that. Anyway, so 18 picks later, this guy fell down to me. Now, Mr. Hayden Hurst. Mr. Hayden Hurst, I was hoping would take after Austin Hooper at Atlanta. A solid guy weekly, but unfortunately, we know how that happened. What happened? He just ended up being a bust. But for the 10th pick as a tight end, it was worth taking that risk. Again, guys, I don't draft tight ends. I actually try to avoid them. But if they're there in the 6th, 7th, or 8th, and I think he's a solid guy, I will draft. But he was there in the 10th. It was worth a shot. And right in that turn, another steal, in my opinion, was Mr. Deontay Johnson of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, Deontay, I knew he had a good end to 2019, but I didn't expect a good year like he did this year. Aside from the drops and the missed games due to injury. But in 2020, he scored 14.8 per game, 221.8 total, which is really solid for a guy in the 11th round. So I was happy with that pick. It was worth the draft here. And the last guy I really wanted to go over was with Mr. James White, 18 picks later. For those of us who've had him for a couple of years, know that he's a good, solid flex play. And at this point, it was a perfect fit. I was happy with this pick. In 2018, he scored 17.3 per game, 276.6 total. 2019, 13.3 per game, 200.2 total. And then missed one game. And then in 2020, he scored 8.3 per game, 116.6 total, missed 2 games. So yeah, the departure of Brady really hurt the New England Patriots. The team was not the same. But it is what it is for a 12th round pick. And so keep in mind, I'm going to group these next guys together. Here, I'm just looking for guys with high, potentially like league winning. So I wasn't going to put them in my starting rosters. It was just more of like, for example, Kamara got hurt. Latavius Murray already had him. You know, Michael Hardman, he was going to be supposedly the wide receiver too. So I'm like, well, in the 14th round, I don't mind it at this point. And then Chris Thompson, he's way past his prime. However, they didn't have a solid running back one in Jacksonville. So if he was the one, to get him in the 15th round was perfect. I take that risk. But we all know how these guys panned out. That were worthless. So the good side, okay. So the bad side, sure, is that they didn't pan out. But the good side is when you're able to read the situations and the way that I'm going to discuss in this channel, you're able to just draft these for better players. So don't get discouraged. It's just things that happen. Nobody's perfect. If everybody was perfect, I'd be a millionaire for sure. But yeah, guys, let's get started with the weeks. Again, if you guys want to pause the video on a weekly basis, so I'm going to be swiping them as fast as I can. If you have questions, please let them in the comment section, and I can respond as to why I started certain players and why I avoided others, which in most teams would have been startable. So yeah, I do a lot of calls or drops of players that you guys would be like, this guy's crazy or something. But there's always something through my thought process. With that being said, let's go. So week 1, I actually won 147.56 to 128.68. Just look at the rosters, right? Ben Roethlisberger was please note, guys, I didn't even draft a QB in this league, or a kicker, or a defense. This is what you guys want to do. So it's like a little tip or trick. If a player gets hurt, you already have them on your roster. Like I told you, like Latavius Murray prior to the season, or you just are able to be ahead of other guys as far as picking up good treasure players, I call them. And so right before the season started, I actually ended up picking QBs. There's so many decent QBs last year and this year. Honestly, guys, you don't even need one. And if you do, and they're there in the 7th round, it's typically where I prefer them. We'll elaborate which QBs I draft if I had to. And kickers, I honestly just leave towards the end, or don't even draft them. And defenses, the same. They're not that much of a difference, even though I'm a strong believer that their points do matter, and they really do. They've won me games, defenses and kickers. However, just for those, how can I say this? Kickers and defenses will show up, like surprise ones. Like they will come up. Anyway, I don't want to waste so much time, but look at the rosters here. Robert Woods, fantastic. Really love that pick. Josh Jacobs exploded, and Joe Mixon was suffering that week. Note that the injury notes here in the red were based on the whole season. So I actually took the screenshots at the end of the season. Mr. David Johnson, again, guys, I told you he was going to be solid. There he was. DJ Chark did okay. Jonathan Taylor actually did okay. So he had respectable games here. Deontay Johnson was put me in bust. Then again, this is my week 2 matchups. So keep looking at the points. Swipe, keep swipe. Yeah, just real quick. One of my secret weapons was for the past couple of years was Yang Koo for Atlanta, and my other secret weapon from Atlanta is Matt Ryan. Like nobody's picking him, 5 rounds, 6 rounds. He was always there in the 7th, and I'd swipe. He's the one solid guy, at least as far as like from 2018 and on. He's that one QB you want to rely on for 20 points a game. Now keep in mind he did struggle this year, but I didn't want to keep too many Atlanta players with him, Matt Ryan, and Hayden Hurst, so I didn't pick him. And then Tampa Bay, it's just a tip for defenses. Just look at their stats. If they have takeaways, fumble recoveries, that type of nature. So it's not a must. And then David Montgomery actually had a good game here. Okay, so unfortunately, week 3 screenshots did not show up, but it's okay. Just look at my QB. He actually changed from Ben to Fitzmagic here. Fitzmagic is one ideal QB. Unfortunately, he got benched for some reason, but it is Miami. Week 5, Teddy Bridgewater ended up being my QB since Fitzmagic. I believe this is the week that he got benched. Okay, look at my flex, guys. There's a little controversy here. This is the downfall of being able to read situations, being able to read players, being able to read talent. And this is what I mean. Yeah, I did end up with Ezekiel Elliott on week 5, who I ended up trading away. Let me see if you guys can notice. Okay, so I ended up trading him for or giving up Jonathan Taylor, DJ Chark, and eventually James White. Now, again, this is the downfall of being able to read situations. So I wanted a player who's going to be solid on a weekly basis. And the guy actually wanted Jonathan Taylor. But I told him he won't be as good. He was still scoring 14 points a game. And eventually he was going to go up to 20 minimum. And I told him it's going to be a little while before he actually gets on that role or that experience under his belt. And he was okay with it. It was just, other league mates did not agree. And I respect them. I'm not saying anything. However, I already knew. And that guy actually ended up winning this trade. We all know Zeke just choked. He had no offense. That team was just trash, to keep it 100. At this point, it is what it is. I'm going to be able to tell you guys, too, what guys to pick up, which ones you can drop. Later on, I just ended up dropping Julian Edelman. Players like that. So, just keep looking at my matchups. I'm going to keep swiping. Excuse me. So, really, Woods, perfect. They were doing what they were doing. I was able to pick up Mike Davis, who was doing really well and disappeared, unfortunately. David Montgomery, there he is. Joe Mixon, I had a bench him. I couldn't rely on him. They were hard to watch. See, Joe Mixon and that offense is so hard to watch sometimes, guys. It's one of those players you just plug in and on your lineup and do not watch the games or follow. Oh, so remember how I told you guys that I had a secret weapon, which was Matt Ryan? From now on, and then I had him in a couple leagues. Mr. Ryan Tannehill. Mr. Ryan Tannehill, watch out. He's gonna explode this year. Robbie Anderson, I forgot about him. I was able to pick up Gronk. Yang Koo, I'm telling you. If you're able to get him this year, go ahead and pick him up. Joe Bernard, never again. Robert Woods. Yeah, Robert Woods. Yeah, Robert Woods. I had so many good wide receivers. Oh yeah, another tip, guys. Go running back. My opinion. Go running back heavy. I don't care in what order, but at least get 4 running backs in the first 4 or 5 rounds, I should say. But you do want one solid wide receiver in those 5 rounds. And I'll elaborate more once we get to those videos. But keep looking at my lineup here. Yeah, Mr. David Johnson was pretty much droppable at this point. Zeke. I was really contemplating dropping Zeke. I'm not going to lie. And I should have. He didn't do anything. And that's the type of reads, guys, that I'm telling you, you're okay to do. I just didn't want anybody else to obviously have them. Mr. Deontay Johnson started coming along here. Robert Woods, 30. And then actually here, Maya Carver Nicola is the guy I traded Jonathan Taylor for. Or Zeke, I'm sorry. So here's that. Keep watching. David Montgomery started coming along just in time for the playoffs. And luckily, I got in. You know, the funny thing about this league is there was about 6 players that were right in that 500 win losing average. And just one wrong game, and you were out. That's how close it was. So this is the quarterfinals against El Skittles. He actually had a really, really solid team in my point of view. It was unfortunate that Devontae Parker got hurt that game. Chase Claypool is one of those guys you just needed for an emergency week. And I had him in another league and I dropped him. I saw right away that he was going to be inconsistent. So here, just saw some of my guys appeared more. Cam Akers, I was able to pick him up. Robbie Anderson is that solid wide receiver too, like an emergency type of player you can plug in every week. So I made it to the semifinal, and this one hurt, guys. This is one of the worst losses I've ever experienced. Yeah. Mario's team, he showed up, and he had a solid team as well, and they just showed up at the right time. Yeah, guys, I'm not drafting Clyde Edwards. Hilaire. He's just a flex going in like the second round, third round. And I'll elaborate more on that. Yeah, his kicker, I'm telling you, kickers matter. And this is the bench here. Mr. David Johnson showed up again. Tony Pollard. Can't believe I should have just again dropped Zeke. And actually I have to go back to my screenshots here to show you what happened. I actually ended up playing for third place and winning. Aaron, shout out to Marco. He had a really, really good team. He was smacking everybody weekly. Everybody. Look at who he had. I think he only put out Ayuk for as an emergency. Kamara, Aaron Jones, Hayden Hurst. He ended up, I guess, showing up at the end of the season. David Swift, Yang Ho Koo, but unfortunately he disappeared this game. You know, he had Hunter Henry, AJ Brown, Tennessee, Terry McLaurin. He had Alan Lazard, which was a total bust. That's another experiment that's over. I ain't trusting that guy. But so yeah, that was it, guys. I ended up winning the third place, which is, if I would have gone to the finals for that 1.6 points that I lost by, I would have won. I scored like the highest on this league, in this week, and it's unfortunate. But guys, I can almost guarantee you we'll make it to the playoffs at least. But to make it to the finals, in my personal experience, I've made it into 5 out of 9 leagues, or 8 technically with the asterisk one. So that's solid. Yeah, I could get you guys there, or at least help and try. And then just one quick screenshot I wanted to show you here, as far as like my standing. So I ended up at 7-6, third place. And look at how many moves I made. Typically, the probability of you being more effective for fantasy is if you make these moves, smart moves, and we can elaborate that throughout the year. And yeah, here it is. Sancho, third place, total points, my rating, points per week. I was ranked as an overachiever, and that's about it. If you guys thought this was a good team, wait until my next team. So guys, comment, like, and subscribe to the channel. If you have questions, just let me know, and we'll go from there. Thank you for joining me. Hasta la próxima. Like a famous Sancho once said, "Tururú."
Certified cabrón, soy un Sancho King. Así que dale, y despacito, porque lo mueve, pero muy rico, así que dale, y despacito, porque lo mueve.